Hello, and welcome to the Table and Well podcast. I'm Tennyson.
And I'm Janelle. Thank you for joining us as we discuss topics and give practical tools that help you live, grow, and be in healthy, joy-filled relationship with God, yourself, and others.
For more information and resources, or if you're looking for coaching, connection, and community, please visit tableandwellco.com. We hope you enjoy this podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Table and Well podcast. We are still, obviously, in the middle of our maturity series, Revisited, and this is episode 8 of the podcast for season 3. And we are still in child, and last podcast we talked about the task, and I think that was a really good podcast to really kind of dig into those tasks of what is needed for actual children to move into maturity, and for us relationally to do the same, and kind of where we are if we're adults now, having to go back and fill some gaps, kind of give us some really, really good practical things that we can do. And we'll hit those as well a little later, the actual practical things that we want to have for you, but just go back and listen to it. Today, we are going to be looking at the child maturity holes. What are some of the obvious immaturity spaces that you will see in adults that have not mastered this stage of maturity?
Right. And of course, we're talking about everybody else.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we're not talking about you, audience. We're talking about other people you might know.
Right, exactly. This is, absolutely. So, ready?
Yep.
Let's
ready.
jump in. Here we go. So, what you might see in adults that have not fully matured in this stage of maturity is going to be very often, you'll see them being very self-centered. They can only take care of one person at a time. So themselves. Yep. That's it. They can't take care of anyone else anytime that
everything's always about them.
Everything's about them, and very egocentric. We know those people. I think we all know those people that is just very selfish. They never moved from me to we. They got stuck in me.
Right. And even for yourself, you might find, or you might see this for other people, where you're having a conversation or a conflict, or even trying to decide something together, and you can't ever seem to get out of this being about you. Everything
comes back.
Yeah, and I'm kind of combining other people and you, so I'll just talk about ourselves.
Yes.
But when you feel like, gosh, everything feels so personal, like that, what they said is so personal. This decision, they're not choosing what I want, and now I'm really upset in it. Like, why doesn't anybody ever care about me? Why doesn't anybody ever want me to be happy? Why is no one listening to me? Or you see somebody else doing this where it's like you're trying to make a decision for a group, but everything continues to center around them. The conversation centers around them. The decision centers around what they want. Or you know that if you choose something that is outside of what they want, that you're going to pay for it.
You're going to pay for it in one way or another. Yeah.
Or you make other people pay for choosing outside of what you want.
Yeah, that's really
and so
good.
That's really obvious in adulthood.
Yeah.
That this skill never got mastered.
That's actually a really good place. I didn't think about, I've thought about that, but in this context, that's really, really good.
It's not cute, though.
No, it's not cute. Not anymore. No. Another obvious maturity hole gap is they may act like a different person in different situations. So they don't have a stable identity. So what that looks like is depending on who they're around, what situation is, what's going on, they are literally, their values might change. How they talk. That happens in family things, but it could really be like, I'm a totally different person when I go to work than I am when I come home.
Right.
Like complete, like night and day. Like if the people at home saw me at work, they wouldn't recognize me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we see this in children when we send kids to grandparents, and the grandparents are like, she was great for me. And the parents are like, she never acts that around here.
Yeah.
It's not growing. It's not bringing who you are to every situation and showing up as yourself in every situation and having developed the skill to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes what that looks like is we're surrendering ourselves to whoever we're with in order to belong or in order to feel seen or known, when we're actually not bringing our identity because we don't know what that actually is.
Right. And I think in that space too, it's you are sacrificing yourself really in that moment. And if you've ever felt like, man, I don't know who I am in this situation or different places, there may be some of that going on. That skill may not have been fully mastered as a child. And it can be, it's interesting too, because it could be very subtle or it could be very
obvious.
Very obvious.
Yeah.
And so
another key piece here too is not being able to act like yourself in the midst of challenging circumstances or a challenging life season where you find yourself getting up and waking up to somebody that you know is not you. You don't feel that stability in your identity because your circumstances are really challenging or feel really challenging.
that's good.
And you aren't acting like yourself. You can feel that you feel maybe distant from yourself, or you feel detached from you, or you feel out of control and you actually can't do anything. You might feel like a victim in the scenario. Yeah. And not that there aren't circumstances that's real and true. I'm not saying that. But if every other day you're waking up like really high and everything's great and oh my gosh, everything's wonderful, and then somebody is unkind to you and you wake up the next day like everything in the world is terrible, that's indication that some of those emotions are riding over you. Remember, we talked about a child stage task is learning how to identify the difference between what emotions are real and what are imagined. And so when those feelings become reality and begin to color everything you do, whether they're high emotions or low emotions, then some of this differentiating between reality and fantasy and feeling is at play.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
And it will cause you to show up differently
in different situations.
Yeah, and even differently to each day.
Yeah, and to yourself too. There's that element too.
Right, because you might be alone all that day.
Right.
But everything in life is like going down the toilet bowl.
Your outlook, your the way you approach the day, all of that can very much change and be totally different. Another one here that you will see is constantly be chasing excitement, fun, pleasure, etc. You never really find satisfaction. And so in part of that too, you may find it difficult to control cravings, especially when you're under stress. And so again, it's that idea of not knowing who you are. Not, again, part of the childhood task and need is to help develop and know what satisfies you and what brings you joy. And so if you don't have that sense of what satisfies you, then you're always going to be looking for the next thing to try to fill that hole, fill that gap. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like some people like this are probably a lot of fun to hang out with, because they're doing the next exciting thing. They're going camping, they're doing skydiving, whatever, that type of thing. But you're looking for this satisfaction.
Some people are just adventurous by nature, but
they are. No, that's 100% true. But in this way, I think it is this is a deeper feeling than that. This is like what actually is bringing you stability and satisfaction, within yourself, and so you're searching for that out there.
Yes, yeah, because you can't find it within.
You can't find it in here, so you're searching for it out there, which a lot of this too can lead into addictions because you're looking for that next quote unquote hit because you need something that's going to satisfy this here.
Yeah, and if you think way back to when we first introduced the concept of joy, the deep knowing through relational experience that someone's glad to be with you no matter what, is a lot of what creates the stability within you of knowing that regardless of if something exciting is happening in my life or I'm doing an adventure or something's changing or I have something to look forward to down the road, like I'm actually okay right here in this present moment just as I am. My life is full.
Yes, right
as
now.
It is. I am complete as I am. Now we all know we have work to do, but there's this sense of satisfaction that I can be satisfied with where I am on the journey today. Knowing that the journey is going to continue and there's going to be hills and valleys along that way. But today I can accept where I am. And that comes into play here. And when I can't do that, when I've not developed the skill of I actually know who I am, I enjoy who I am, knowing that this is not the end, but also content with where I am, develops the ability to do this. And what you see in leaders in particular when this is not satisfied or when they're not satisfied is every other week something is really, really important that we're like pursuing with all of our might. Like today we're going 110 miles toward this particular project, and this is going to be the thing that really brings the thing, that brings the satisfaction, that brings the purpose, and this is what we're going to champion, and this is what we're going to do. And then you show up to work or to church or wherever your leaders might be, and now we're suddenly doing this, and this suddenly matters. You're going to see it in this way because they can't not be satisfied where they are, and so they're constantly in pursuit of the next best thing. And I think we as Americans, unfortunately, this is part of our culture.
I agree.
And especially since we've lost some of the consistency with the industrial age, where we went from being like career people that actually retired and got a pension and all of that, and now we are a world of entrepreneurs, which I'm passionate about entrepreneurialism and the drive and the creativity and just the fact that it isn't forever, the apostolicness of entrepreneurialism, and that's even how we're built.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet, if we cannot be satisfied with where we are today and actually drink that in, then it's gonna continue to create challenges. And the way that I like to think about it is, if we ate a meal today, did we eat to be satisfied, or did we eat to because it tasted good? Or because we wanted something sweet. Like if we're continually chasing junk and sugar, we're gonna crave more junk and sugar. And we're never going to be satisfied, and we're actually not going to be healthy.
That's good. Yeah.
But if we do the discipline of doing the things that are actually going to feed our body and create health and satisfaction within our body, sustainable satisfaction, then that's the maturity. But it takes maturity to do that.
Right. Yeah.
Right. To not eat junk all day.
Right. And it takes again, people helping you to know, okay, that's not what's best for you right now.
Right.
And then you actually learning that and then being able to walk that out.
Yeah, and identifying what I need. What I really want right now is junk.
But is that what I actually need right now?
Is that actually what I need? And that goes back to that controlling cravings under stress. Identifying, okay, and this typically comes with emotional upset or boredom. Usually it's one of the other.
Two. Yep.
And I'm upset right now, and I don't really want to feel these feelings, and I don't really have the skill to process the feelings.
Yep.
And so I'm going to numb in some fashion.
Right.
Whether that's I eat junk, I numb on social media, or maybe I have a porn addiction or something of that nature that is allowing that to be cut off, that discomfort to be cut off. And rather than saying, oh, wow, I'm feeling drawn to do this behavior, this negative behavior that I know is not best for me. Okay, am I able to take a moment and identify, what I'm actually feeling right now is this, and what I actually need is that.
Right.
What I want is actually not what I need or what's going to give me sustainability.
And then the next step is, I actually need this, and then discerning where can I get that, what I need.
Right.
And doing the work to either do it yourself or ask someone. Right. Or ask God to actually give you what you actually need in that moment.
Right, yeah. And following it through.
Doing
the hard thing to follow it through, especially when access to whatever the numbing thing
is way easier.
Yeah.
So good. Another obvious maturity hole was going to be to struggle to persevere in difficulty and do things they don't feel like doing. So
exactly what
we just said, exact same thing. So again, it takes maturity to actually persevere in the difficult moment, and then do the thing that you don't feel like doing. Because honestly, usually the thing that is best for you, you don't feel like doing because it takes work.
Right, and it takes discipline. And so, again, we're talking about these child maturity holds and how it shows up in our adulthood. And so if you find yourself struggling, it's likely that the tasks that we talked about in the last episode and then the needs from the community, those were not likely met in this area.
Yep.
And that's being taught how to do hard things.
Exactly.
Yep.
So you also might see that they fill their life with unproductive activities despite their God-given abilities. Wow. So it's like you can look at someone and like you know their gifts, you can see their gifts, you see their talents, you see what's really natural for them to do, and they're just not doing it. They're just they're doing everything else but the thing that everyone knows.
Right. That's so obvious to everybody else. Yeah.
And for them, it's not obvious to them, or that thing maybe doesn't even bring them satisfaction for whatever reason. And they're just, I don't want to say wasting their lives away, but they're missing out on what would actually bring them joy, bring them satisfaction, help them make their mark and see how they fit into the world.
Right.
That would be
live out their identity.
Yeah. That would be beneficial for them and the world around them, and they're just choosing not to do it.
I actually see this in two different ways. I see people who are filling their life with unproductive activities that are quote unquote a waste of time, just like lazy responses to life, just wasting days doing nothing really in particular, waiting for something else to happen to them that's going to be the thing, or I also see people, particularly in the entrepreneurial realm, knowing what they want, being able to articulate it, seeing the bigger picture of what they want to develop, and spending their days so busy doing things that don't actually matter.
Oh, that don't push towards that
thing.
That
don't actually push toward the thing.
I don't know anything about that.
I see both and. I think this could be interpreted like
that's
fills
good.
life with unproductive activities as if they're wasting their life away doing things that doing nothing. Or you could actually appear very, very, very busy.
But it's not pushing towards what they're designed to do.
Right.
And what they actually want.
Right. Yeah. You're very busy not actually living out your identity because your identity feels scary, or the thing that is deep in your heart is too big or scary. Yeah.
Wow.
And creates maybe a big emotion for you.
Yeah.
And that has gone unprocessed, and
That's
you don't know
really
how to
good.
do the hard thing.
Yeah.
That is needed to get you there. So you do lots of little things that are like busy hard, and not actually that I don't know how to do this and I have to grow to get to where I want to get. So
I gotcha.
I just make myself busy in the meantime.
Make myself busy. Wow. The appearance of, anyway. Yeah. Another maturity hole that you'll see obvious in maturity spaces is they experience continual frustration or disappointment because their needs are not met. Because they don't know how to ask for it. And they may not even know what their needs are. They may not actually have an idea of how to get what they want because they've never been, again, those adults weren't taught the skill of knowing what you need and then being able to articulate it. Or maybe they did know what they need, but they can't articulate it because for whatever reason, again, it goes back to attachment you talked about, because maybe their feelings and opinions never mattered to their caregivers. And so now, even though they know what they want, it doesn't matter. Right. Because it doesn't matter.
Right. And
so there's a lot of different ways that this can manifest and that can show up in you, kind of how it happened. But at the end of the day, you're continually frustrated and you're continually disappointed because those needs that you have are not met. And what that can turn into is almost this passive aggressive way to get what you want.
Right.
Yeah, this kind of covert, underhanded, kind of backhanded comment, whatever, so people would give you what you want or what you think you need.
Right. Yeah. Rather than just coming out and saying it. Like, actually what I really want in this situation or what I really need in this situation is this. Can you do that for me? And risking that conversation, just bypassing it altogether, or never doing the work to actually figure out what you need and
expecting everyone else to figure it out for you.
To figure it out, and then they're not figuring it out, and then you're irritated. I think for me, it comes from even a different place where I come in with a bunch of unspoken expectation around what I think should be happening or people should be doing.
Yeah.
And then I'm not articulating that at all. I'm not articulating like, okay, in this exchange, I'm expecting this from this person.
Right.
And they can, I know what they can expect of me, but nobody's articulating that. And so when they don't do their part, we talk a lot about like my part, your part. They're not doing their part that I decided that they should do. And they're not somehow figuring that out.
Right.
And then I get really frustrated they didn't figure it out, and now I feel really disappointed because they didn't meet my expectation
that you
and then
put
it
on
also
them
moves
to-
into
yeah.
resentment, and I find myself resentful, and or because those of you who know anything about Strength Finders, that's another amazing tool that is out there. Kind of takes assessment, I guess you could say, of your strengths, and one of my number one strength is responsibility. So, which also comes out of childhood trauma, but that's fine.
That's another word. Yeah, another podcast.
Yeah, but so I can often put expectations on people or on situations, and then people aren't stepping up to the expectation, and then I make myself responsible for filling in the gap of making sure that the outcome still happens, even though people aren't doing their part.
Right. Yes.
Even though they didn't know that I decided what their part was, or I didn't even have and it's not even about me deciding and telling them what their part is either. A lot of times it's just collaborating. It's having the conversation of, hey, are we in alignment on our outcome here? We are. Okay. How do you think we're going to get there? What do you think you need to do? What are you expecting me to do? Here's what I'm expecting myself to do. Here's what I was thinking you were going to do. Are we on the same page about that?
Yep.
And it is that identifying what you need and asking for it.
Yeah.
And then actually verbalizing that and then seeing that through.
Yep. So good. So in child level leaders are really good at taking care of themselves and making sure they get what they want, but not so good at creating an environment where everyone's needs are being met.
Yes.
And so, child adults, as we call them, can take care of themselves, but they can only take care of themselves.
Right.
And they often at the expense of others. And so again, you'll see this in leaders that basically it's again, the show is about them. Everything's about them.
And you know it.
And
you're working for them. You're
or you're
not
working
about
for
you.
their ego.
You are for their ego. Yeah. You are a cog in their machine to build their empire, and it may be super obvious, and then at other times it may not be obvious at all.
Yeah.
And maybe even right now as you're hearing this podcast, you're like, oh, that's why this doesn't feel satisfying for me. Because I'm caught in a scenario where I'm being led by a child leader.
Yeah.
That it always comes back to them, and I didn't. Oh, now I see how that's at play.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And without going into a ton of detail, but working for someone at some point that was the MO. It was very much their vision, their thing, their whatever. Always, all of these things, changing directions, all of that. And it was very unfulfilling and very unsatisfying. You try to find destabilizing. You try to find your own space to kind of catch your niche in to bring satisfaction because you're doing something just for yourself. But it was very, very hard to get your footing and actually move anything forward with any type of consistency.
Right.
Because there was always switching, always moving, and it was always about them, always about their vision, their thing, and they're hard to work for. Yeah,
they are. And as we move down the maturity series, we'll talk about what a mature leader will look like and should look like. We're saying right now what it looks like when the maturity skills are lacking, but what does it look like when they're actually all in place? Yeah. And just even a simple thing here, if you just flip it, it's like, okay, a good leader should be able to take care of themselves. Again, not denying taking care of themselves, because and we'll talk about that in a minute.
That's coming right up. Yeah.
But taking care of everyone else too on their team.
Yep.
It is a both and maturity brings us the ability of the both and.
Yes.
In a lot of areas.
So many areas. And so just as Janelle was saying, so for other child level leaders with pseudo maturity, which we're going to talk about that right now, the roles are reversed. So what happens is while they still can only take care of one person or one group of people, 9 times out of 10 they can't take care of themselves. They're taking care of everyone else,
right?
But they lack the maturity to take care of themselves. Because remember, in child level maturity, your goal is to take care of one person, just one.
That's all you can do.
That's in your all development. You can do. And so, so whoever needs the care is who they care for.
Right. And so the pseudo maturity it's basically adult or parent maturity that's placed on a child happens when the caregiver needs care over the child's care, and that child becomes the caregiver. There's a role reversal. And in doing collabs and in working with lots of people, this is not as uncommon as it may seem, unfortunately. But then this rolls into our adulthood, and as we're talking about, like, okay, this creates a gap in childhood maturity because we actually don't get to work on our childhood maturity.
Yes.
We don't get to learn how to take care of ourselves. We don't get to learn how to identify who we are. We don't get to learn how to regulate our own emotions. We don't get to learn how to learn what satisfies us.
Yes.
And so we spend a lifetime kind of working in our pocket, which feels very natural and normal for us. And we find ourselves in 1,005 situations where we end up caring for everybody and we have no idea how to care for ourselves. And people love us because we're so great at taking care of everybody else and seeing everybody else. And we are exhausted and we are depleted and we're often sick, like even physically sick in our bodies. And I'm saying we and our because this may or may not be
not so much anymore. But
but like absolutely. Something that I really had to grow through of like, I was so proud of my ability to my maturity. Honestly, I can show up very maturely to a lot of leadership positions and see people really well and care for people really well and know what they need and help them get that. And I had no clue how to take care of me, and it was costing me huge.
Yeah. It's the people that you absolutely, like, you love them. They're incredible caregivers, and that you see them in situations, you see how they you see how they can discern and navigate and what people need, and they're there and they're doing it, and then they go home and they don't know how to even look on the inside and handle what they actually need, because because again, you didn't mature past child level. You can only take care of one person, and in that moment, it's someone else, and it's not you.
Yeah, and even the childhood tests that we just talked about, like learning how to satisfy and identify who you are, those skills are still learned in childhood when you become a parentified child.
Yes, they are.
They're just applied to someone else.
Yes.
Which is so wild to think. Like, the development is still happening. You just become expert skilled at doing that for everyone else, and you just miss out on doing it for you. So it can look like in adulthood, working really hard to serve others sacrificially, but having very little satisfaction for your efforts. It feels like there's always more need than there is capacity within you.
Yeah.
And because there is, like, you are not full on the inside and you're pouring out of an empty bucket. And that's very real. You may be serving out of fear, afraid of upsetting others, and you're lacking the ability to do this out of joy.
Yeah.
Again, because those gaps exist within you of not knowing who you are and not knowing that you are someone who's worthy of being delighted to be with, regardless of what you do for anybody else. Right? Because back to attachment, like most parentified children earned their love and belonging by caring for their parent.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So, or caring for maybe their siblings. Like, if I'm not caring for my sibling or I'm not caring for my parent, then I don't really belong here. I don't have a place, or I'm not seen or valued.
Yeah.
And not seen. Usually most
you're seen.
Yeah, most parentified children are not seen, honestly. They become almost like servant roles.
Yes. Yeah.
Making sure everybody's cared for. But that's how they stay in the game.
Yeah, that is how they discovered, or how they found out that they get love and affection and attention and value. That's where their value comes from, is their ability to serve others.
Belonging. It's how they keep their belonging. It's their, remember we talked about that role in the bigger picture of the world. Well, they understand their place in their family is to be that person. And so then they take that on as an identity, and then you carry that into your adulthood, and you're like, okay, what's my place in this new season of my life? And it's like, I'm shaped like a caregiver. And so so
you actively look for places to give care outside of yourself.
Right. And we talked about like that puzzle shaping happening, and we talked about it in a positive part of like, this, we're helping shape the identity and helping shape how the puzzle piece is shaped so that it fits into the bigger picture. Well, here you're still being shaped.
You are being shaped.
But you're being shaped like a caregiver, and when you go to try to fit places, you will naturally fit into those spaces.
Mm-hmm.
But this is not serving you.
No.
And I think this can be really hard to untie because it gives you so much worth and value, and it feels so natural. And yet it is a denial of you as an actual person.
I was thinking that earlier as you were talking. This is honestly the space when we're in our labs, when we're doing coaching, when we're talking to people, that people who have lived in this pseudo maturity caregiver space, and that's how they found their belonging and connection and all of that. That is the hardest. This space is one of the hardest places to come out of, because in order for you to come out of this, you actually have to be selfish.
Right, exactly.
You have to be selfish, because you're relearning this child level maturity, which is about being selfish.
It's all about you.
It's all about you. It's about being very egocentric, because what makes who am I? What brings me satisfaction?
Right.
What makes me happy? And that feels like a total dismissal of who you are as a person, because you spent your entire life thinking of what makes the other person happy and how do I care for them. And for me to do anything for myself is not good.
Right.
I can't.
Right. And that back to that discernment wrong. Piece, the discernment had been flipped.
It's flipped. Yep.
To where you have been taught to discern everybody else's needs and what's best for everybody else, and have been taught to discern that what's for you is actually bad.
Yep.
And so you have to relearn that discernment of actually what's best for me, what's bad for me. Bad for me might actually look like caring for that person right now, because what's needed is that I'm actually cared for. Yeah.
It looks bad, or doesn't matter. So what's good for me doesn't matter, because my needs never mattered to anyone, any of my caregivers or any people that should have been caring for me. My needs, my wants, desires, they didn't matter. And so I flipped to just caring for them, because that's how I found, again, my belonging. Right.
And oftentimes this is easily tied to these pseudo children often come out of infant maturity having been uncared for too, and having had parents who could identify their needs and meet them. And so many people who are in this pseudo maturity also feel a lot of pain around being unseen and uncared for, because they are the people who show up and care for everybody else without anybody having to ask. They have this like sixth sense of understanding what everybody else needs and really meeting it before it's ever articulated. And they are deeply longing for someone else to come along and be who they are for everyone else to be for them.
Yeah.
And so there can be a lot of pain here. And in community, the goal would be that we do have more people who can pick that up in a healthy way, like in a mature way. Notice people, identify what they need, care for them, help repair some of that infant maturity.
Yes.
But honestly, one of the biggest shifts out of this is you learning to care for you the way you care for everybody else. If you're an adult who did not get, who you're like, yep, that was me all the way, the work to do, and you're likely going to need some support, is to learn how to take care of you and to be selfish for a time. I promise you the world will not burn down. I promise you the people that you care for and are caring for and are meeting needs for will likely get upset.
Yes. I was going to say that.
Because they are likely greatly benefiting from your sacrifice.
Yep.
And you are worth it.
Yes.
You are absolutely worth it. And the gift you're giving back is giving them the opportunity to mature and grow as well.
Yeah. I want to share this quick story. So we have some friends, and we've kind of adapted this a little bit, but we have some friends who they noticed that the one spouse was acutely aware of every shift, moan, groan, everything that he was doing, and she was very much anticipating the needs because of a moan. And we went to visit them, and they were so they were both stuck in this child level maturity in different spaces. She was more in the pseudo, and he was learning the skills,
how to take care
of himself.
Yeah.
And so we were there, and a ton of times she was like, I'm not going to, I forget the word she said, but basically it's like, either, I think something around the fact of like, you need to express like what you need in this space.
Use your words. Basically, they started saying to each other, like, use your words.
Yeah, like I'm done trying to figure. I'm not going to be figuring you out anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was coming out of her childhood of having to, in order to stay connected to her family, anticipate the needs of her caregivers and meet those before upset occurred.
Yep.
So she had this like hyper awareness of those moans and groans from her childhood of the people in her family, and then it just adapted into the marriage naturally. And he came from a background of everybody anticipating his needs and meeting them, so it was really natural for him to groan and that be a slight indication that I might have something going on. And she was super skilled at being like, okay, I can calculate what that is and take great care of it.
And so on the outside looking in, it probably to them both felt like they had a great
they were functioning cohesively.
Yeah, because I make a groan, she feels the need, and she's like, well, he makes a groan and I feel the need, so I'm serving my husband and I'm feeling, and he, so it's, but
and it was very natural for both of them. That was not a discomfort until time passed and decades passed in their marriage, and she's basically exhausted from a lifetime of this, and he is feeling like he's not really himself.
Right.
And he can see that showing up. And again, coming into some of this language, it was like, aha, that's what's going on here. Like, we knew this wasn't really, we weren't really winning. Like, it felt really natural, but we knew we weren't really winning, but we didn't know what part of it wasn't bringing us satisfaction, or that satisfaction was actually a thing in this relationship. And so having now language, it was like, oh, that's what's going on.
And it's cool because they were both actually growing in their childhood maturity by taking a step back from the thing that actually felt supernatural for both of them to do.
Right. Right. They chose into the discomfort of saying, we're not going to do this pattern anymore.
Yep.
And I think we've done the same thing. Because we've been married since we were literal children. And have developed a lot of similar habits even to this couple of because of our own backgrounds. And I think codependency even plays in here, where you become so naturally dependent on one another to meet your needs. And part of a pseudo maturity need is the need to be needed.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I said it. That part of what you feel like you need is a place to care for people. Yep. Otherwise, nobody needs you, and it can feel really disorienting.
Then who are you?
Yeah, really disorienting to back out of these spaces, and can make you feel a little bit crazy. But, and I shared this in a past podcast, but the breakthrough for me was, and what it looked like for me is all the kids that we fostered. Yeah. Like, I was longing for a mother. I was longing for someone else to identify my needs and meet them. I had a childhood where I had to do that for my parents. And so then it was really natural for me to do that for other people. And so I turned it into good.
Right.
I was like, okay, like, I have a passion for kids who don't have parents, and I'm going to anticipate their needs and meet them. And it felt so good and great. And in the process of that, never learned how to meet my own needs. Yeah. And so it was well into my 40s that I learned how to do that. And that comment from the counselor to say, where I was struggling and frustrated because I'm like, what I really need is a parent
someone to take care of me.
Take care of me. And I had placed that responsibility on you and was really pissed about the fact you were sucking at that. And lo and behold, like, learned that it wasn't actually your job, and that I wasn't going to be real happy if the relationship shifted into you being my father. Right? Like, that actually wasn't, it was what I was expecting of you, but it wasn't actually what I would want in the end. And so learning that I actually mothered other people really, really well. And if I just gave myself the same love and care that I was giving to everybody else, to the point of exhaustion, that I could actually grow through this stage. Yeah. Because I was excellent at it. Yes. But I just denied myself that care.
So good. Yep, so good.
Okay, so in child maturity, the primary task to be completed is taking care of self.
Yep.
Just you.
Yep, no one else.
And in order to repair this task, you're going to need to go through a season of taking care of yourself.
Yep.
Just you. Primary resulting problem as an adult, if this is not completed, is you likely will not take responsibility for self. And you're going to pass the reason why you're not who or where you want to be is that it's because of everyone else.
Yep.
You're going to know that a person has graduated from the child level of maturity to the adult level because he will shift from being self-centered, a self-centered child at that, to a both-centered adult. And we've mentioned
really
this
good,
mutually satisfying relationship.
Yes.
I can care about myself and you at the same time. I'm not giving up care of myself in order to care for you, because then we're just in pseudo childhood maturity. And while a child needs to learn me-centered fairness, how do I make it fair for me? An adult learns we-centered fairness. How do I make it fair for us? Moving from that me to we.
Yeah. So it's the idea of actual friendship.
Right.
Actual friendship. What does it look like for us to be mutually invested in this relationship together, where I take care of me, you take care of you, and you take care of me, and I take care of you.
Yes.
It's
but first that starts with I actually take care of myself.
Me, and I know
so
what
I'm
I
not
need. Yeah.
right. I'm not placing all of the care of me on you.
Yeah.
Because we won't win. None of us have capacity.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when we get into the adult level maturity stage, we'll talk more in depth about that. So yeah, that's all the time we got today. But this has been really good. Just looking at this pseudo maturity, I think it's really important because I think there's probably a lot of people out there that are in this space, whether they know it or not. I think they're there. So be sure to join us.
I just think we read their job description, so there's going to be a lot less doubt.
That's true. Very, very true. So be sure to join us next week as we jump into the last part of this child level maturity. And we're going to talk about the practical, personal tasks that you can do to begin to grow in this maturity of the child level maturity. And then again, we are always in community with people. You are someone's community. So what are some of the things you can do as well to help your community grow in this area of child level maturity? So we'll see you guys next time. You've been listening to the Table and Well podcast. New episodes stream every Tuesday. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review to let us know. Also, subscribe on your favorite listening platform to stay up to date on all things Table and Well. To learn more, start your journey, or get information on how Table and Well can help develop your community, family, or teams to be relationally healthy and authentically connected, please go to tableandwell.org/collab to schedule an interest call, or you can email us directly at known@tableandwell.org.